We are doing this session today because we need to uh, teach basically how to write reports. When you do courses with Compass or Bishop Burton or any college or any university, you learn how to write scientific reports. You write the academic stuff. You get a scenario of a dog that has presented several problems, and then you have to analyze what it could be. You have to give a diagnosis, or perhaps, I think, if I remember rightly, in Compass case, you often have to give a diagnosis plus two alternatives, what else it could be, and then proceed to a treatment plan. But it is all very lengthy and all very academic, and it is the problem is when we are then released into the wide world, to our clients who are not really interested in all the scenarios this particular behavior problem could be. All they want is, how are you going to help me cure my dog? And this is what we need to focus on in a very condensed version, because they do not want the Latin names for any disorder their dog has. They do not want to know what the consequences can be of this particular behavior if this and that happens. They just want their individual case treated, and rightly so, they are paying for it. Now, you're talking basically to a layman. In other words, if you go to the doctor and you have got an ingrown toenail, you do not want to hear the Latin terminology for it. You do not want to know all the ins and outs on it. You do not really want to hear what other people had as a consequence of having an ingrown toenail. You just want to know about you. And this is something we need to concentrate on when we do our clients' visits. So we keep it all in simple terms. And then, of course, after the visit, you follow this up with a report. Now, this report, again, is something you are sending, although they are intelligent people, you need to put it into simple English, into English that they can understand. And don't be fooled and think that the client is as interested in the case as you are. They want a quick reference. They want to have a look at a piece of paper which you have written to them, and it is very clearly laid out what they have to do. You obviously tell them during your consultation, but you also need to put it in writing, because there is so much information flooding their heads that they forget half of it. So you need to put it all down in writing to them. And it needs to be snappy. It needs to be short, to the point, because they lose interest. If they read how their dog, or why their dog piddles inside the house, and they read 5 pages on it, they lose interest. They don't read it. They open your report and they say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages. Oh, yeah, I read that Sunday. Yeah, so they never look at it. And you have wasted a lot of time, of your time, which you don't really get paid for, because our fees are never high enough to pay for all this. And nobody ever refers to it. So your success rate is a lot lower. Now, after your visit, I would always suggest to write the report as quickly as possible, because you forget. Well, I forget, which may not say anything about you, but it does about me. I do them as quickly as I can, certainly next day. Yeah, if I can at all do it, then by next day I will have the report written. And that is not to please the client, it is more so that I don't forget the nitty-gritty bits. Often, especially at the beginning, I was mulling over cases a lot in my head and thought about them a lot. And have I forgotten anything? Have I forgotten to mention something? That is something quite normal to happen. If you go to a client that you find afterwards, why didn't I say this or that? And you surely can include that in your report. Yeah? Even if you didn't mention it, you can put it in your report. It's up to them to read it. But it's worth putting it in. I write a short letter to the client, a cover letter, yeah, and it is always starting with something positive, like how nice it was to meet them and their dog, who was the reason for my visit. It is good to start a letter with something positive, because when they call you, they feel very negative about the relationship between them and their dog. They have a problem, they don't know how to solve it. So this is why everything needs to be done very friendly, and you want to grab their attention. Yeah. So you will see from the copies that I sent you that there is a letter accompanying my report, basically. And it is just a short letter which summarizes that I visited, how pleased I was to meet them, how nice it was to meet them. And I always give a short diagnosis in that cover letter. Yeah, I will just very quickly summarize. I do not go into details here. They know what the problem is. You don't need to list them all again. But I would say that that they called me because their dog suffers from piddling in the house or urinating in the house, or from separation anxiety, or from barking or attacking other dogs. So there is a diagnosis there, which I keep in plain English apart from separation anxiety. But I think people understand what that is. That letter, that cover letter, is no more than one A4 page, but the A4 page has got my letterhead big at the top. Yeah, so in our case, ICB will be quite prominent in there. If you have any other medals that you can attach to it, you know, if you're a member of ISAB and you've got the logo of ISAB, then put that on. Whatever institution you belong to, you can stick it on. Yeah, it's people are often impressed by all these nuisance things that you belong to, that you pay heavily for. And also it should have your name, your telephone number, your email. If you have a web address, then your web address. So that takes up quite a big space of your A4 sheet. And then the name of the dog that is under the program, and then the text, whatever you write to them. Now, your actual behavior modification program goes on a separate sheet, and that may be between 1 and 4 pages long. And I give such a broad spectrum because it is, you often walk into a house and, you know, all the only problem seems to be that the dog's piddles on the carpet, just as an example. But when you're actually there, you find that it also bites the owner, it attacks other dogs, and the whole box opens up and you go, oh God. So you're probably dealing with a very anxious dog that is presenting all these problems. So what I do is I have a separate sheet which then says, you will see from the reports that I sent to you, that it is a behavior modification program for the dog, the age of the dog, male, entire, or castrated, or whatever. again, I just do a very brief paragraph saying what a lovely dog it is, and that it suffers from separation anxiety or dog attack or whatever, and but that it is basically a nice dog. It's a friendly dog. He was very welcoming. He greeted me nicely. Say anything positive, because don't forget, this dog is often on limited time. Yeah. So you want to sweeten the client up, and you want to make it easy for the dog. And how important this is. I might as well tell you now. It's a recent case that I was involved in. They had tried everything. The behaviorist was at his or her end, not knowing what to do, and contacted me. I shared it with some people, and we all came to the conclusion that it could be this, that, and the other. It could have been starvation of oxygen. It could have been during birth. It could have been epilepsy. It could have been a thyroid problem. An MRI scan was recommended for this particular problem. And I thought all of that costs a lot of money, and the dog was very much on borrowed time. Yeah, I think they were close to getting rid of it. As it was a German Shepherd, it won't be easy to rehome, because if there is an aggression problem, which there was in this case, it means you're pretty much on death row. I suggested to change the diet and to a raw diet, to get rid of all chemicals. And I suggested not to use any aversive methods of training, just to praise this dog, even if it nibbled. It once it bit, actually, but there was always a lot of contact by teeth. I suggested not to exclude it out of the room, not to put it in a crate anymore, not to shout at it, and not even to use the word no, but just to stay positive for just 2 weeks and see what happens. So what I did was basically, and this is what I want you to always keep in mind, is to be on the dog's side. Whatever the problem is, even if he bites people, be on the dog's side and get into the dog's head. Yeah, often things are not trained out of a dog, but you need to understand a dog, and that is the important bit. So this is, even then, when I got involved and I was in direct contact with the client, it was just an email. I have never seen the dog. I was just going by the reports I had from the behaviorist and from the client via email. I started that actually, I don't think there is such a big problem. And she should change the diet, and she should not even use no for 2 weeks. And let's see what happens. We can always escalate the treatment. We can always step in and go further, but let's start the cheap way and see whether we can change something. So again, although I did not do an official report to her, I started off being positive about her dog, and I wanted her to feel positive about her dog. She actually did it, and the success after 2 weeks is phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal. I talked to her on the phone yesterday for the first time. I've still not seen this person, but she's over the moon, and the behaviorist too. So it's working. Positivity has a huge effect, and you must never forget to include that in your report. Have a nice word about the dog. Whether you like it or not is a second matter. And we can always escalate step up our behavior program, but we need to start gently and the dog always needs to be treated gently, and we need to understand the dog. So then, once you've done that important paragraph of how lovely the dog really is, and you list anything that's positive, how it greeted you, how it looked at you, how beautiful he is, whatever, yeah, anything positive. You then start by putting headlines in bold print, underline, say separation anxiety. And then you list what it is. It could be separation anxiety, of course. It might be boredom, yeah, frustration. It might be something very different to actual separation anxiety that needs careful examination. But here, for the point of the exercise, the headline is separation anxiety. Or you write destruction of furniture instead of separation anxiety, and then you explain what they can do about it. Yeah, that in your opinion it's not a separation anxiety, that because the owners are away, but it is because the dog is bored stiff, and it should be exercised beforehand, before they go to work. It should not be left longer than 4 hours. I think there's something in the law that says 4 hours is the maximum, and you know, you might as well point that out. You can always say, oh, you wouldn't report it, but you would like to advise them that somebody else could report it if they leave their dog longer for that. That they can get a dog walker in, that they can leave stuffed Kongs, interactive toys, and exercise the dog before they go out so that it is actually whacked when they go out and are pleased that mummy is leaving or daddy, so they can have a snooze on the sofa. So you put it, the headline, and then you put what you would suggest your treatment is for that. And then you go down the list, what other problems there are. You know, I don't want to go back to this piddling in the house, but it is just such an easy example. So urinating in the house, and you give your treatment plan for that. Attacking other dogs in the park, have it in headlines, and then go into the treatment, the modification program. The reason for the headlines in bold and in paragraphs is that if the dog is showing symptoms more for one problem than for another, that they will need to quickly refer to your report and see, there it is. They don't have to read through pages and pages. If you just write a letter to them and mention all the problems in a letter form, they have to read through the letter every time before they actually get to this point that they just want to refer to. So therefore, it is much easier for the client to have a headline and attacking dogs. Right, this is what I need to read up on. This is important to me right now. So it's easy to refer to. A client will not read pages and pages and pages in order to get to the correct point. They want to go through, there it is. Yeah? And it's much better, it's a higher success rate for your modification program to be followed if it is in points, yeah, with headlines and paragraphs. Now, I always mention at the back that if they have problems, they can always contact me, give my telephone number again or email, and you know, if there's anything they don't understand of this program, they should get in touch with me. Then I write, if a vet is involved, I often ask during consultations if they want me to copy the vet in, and if they say yes, it would be good. Then I write a letter to the vet saying that I have visited the client, saying what the diagnosis is. It suffers from separation anxiety. And then I say that if they want to see my modification program, if they could please let me know. I'm not sending a modification program straight away because from experience we have learned that the veterinary nurses open the letters. Oh, this is what you do when there's dog-to-dog aggression. Oh, isn't that fantastic? So the next client who comes into their practice and was a dog with separation anxiety, or with dog-to-dog aggression, they will mention it to the vet, the nurses in with them, and they say, yeah, we help you sort that out. Now, you and I know how individual each case is and how terribly wrong that can go. So I never, ever send reports to vets again unless the vet asks me. And if he asks me, I will address it personally to him or her. Yeah, but not to the veterinary nurse. It's confidential. That report is confidential and for his or her eyes only, not for the veterinary nurse. Yeah, and that way you have covered yourself, because if they get something wrong and there is a massive dog fight because they used your program on a dog that was wrongly diagnosed by the veterinary nurse, then you know that is not good for your reputation. Yeah. Oh, Mrs. Whoever said that. Yeah, that is the way to treat it. Well, it isn't. It's a program for an individual dog which you have assessed. So never make the mistake to trust veterinary nurses in that respect. So you can write to the vet, say what the diagnosis is. That is important, and then tell him that he's welcome to the report if he wants it, but to let you know. I personally, this is very individual, very much up to you. I follow up a visit and my report by a phone call. I've seen the dog, I've met the dog, I know what's going on, and I'm just following up if they are following my program and what success they are having, if we need to tweak it here, tweak it there, and so on. I do not do follow-up visits for two reasons. One is that very often, they follow-up visits are paid separately, and you then do not get an appointment. They drag it out. You have to keep on chasing them. When can I come and see you? And I found it very frustrating that I didn't get anywhere because they didn't want to part with another 25, 50 pounds, whatever. So they don't want a second appointment. I'm not saying that a second appointment is bad. If you are a behaviorist who wants definitely a second appointment, then include that second appointment in your price in the first instant, because you will never see them again otherwise. Yeah. I personally just do phone calls and check up, and sometimes it takes several phone calls to work through, to support the client, to see how it's going, to see where they're going wrong. It's often a long call. I also ask them to ring me, but I get them somehow. If they don't come back after 2 weeks, I ring them to give them a nudge and say, how's it going? Yeah. The follow-up visits, I started off doing them. I didn't find them particularly successful. You go through the same things all over again. I didn't find that it brought a lot. I think the first visit, a 2 hour to 2.5 hours I take usually, that is important. The rest I mean, it's up to you. I'm not dictating on what you should do and what you shouldn't do, up to you. But my advice is if you want to um, include a second visit, charge it up front, yeah, in order to get your money and in order to see the dog again, because then they will actually see you. If they have to pay again, they won't. Yeah. Okay, this was basically it.